We're going to take the next hour and a half and go through what it means to set up a node, why you should set up a node, and how set up a node and have your own personal server for the best use of internet and, of course, alongside Bitcoin. So I'm going to hand it off to the one and only Giacomo Zucco that's going to he'll give a nice overview of the importance of running a node and or your own personal server.
Thank you, Tom. So why to run a node? This is something that is always, we always need to push this because everything else, there is a threat model which is very clear. You don't own your keys, you get wrecked by an exchange. And we have recent examples that we can show. You don't run your node, the kind of risk you run are more subtle, so we need to push this as a mimetic situation a little bit more. But I will try to break down for you, and then we will enter the more practical things with Lex, and he will show you how to do one example of this. So the first reason you should run a node is that unless you run a full validated node, you don't know if somebody paid you any Bitcoins at all. Either Lightning or on-chain, you don't know. You have to trust somebody else. The only technical way to know that somebody paid you some Bitcoin is to have a validating full node which is able to check every digital signature and every proof of work from the Genesis block with the Coinbase of those coins until you're receiving transaction. So that's the only way to know that technically. In theory, every time you receive Bitcoin without your full node, you are just trusting somebody else. Then again, practically speaking, you will be probably individually fine if you trust somebody else in most cases. That's why people don't feel the need to use a full validated node, because if you just trust, for example, the majority of miners, like SPV wallets want you to do, or if you trust the company issuing your phone wallet, so you are, for example, you install a wallet on your phone, the company issuing that phone will spoon feed you the transaction validity without you verifying. They will probably not scam you soon, but eventually something may happen. It could be an exit scam by a wallet company. It could be a global organized attempt to push fake transactions on you, like actually happened or was almost going to happen back in 2017 with the New York agreement attack. So a few famous American companies with Chinese miners, majority, they basically, they were organizing together to push a fake version of Bitcoin that was going to collapse on day one due to a bug. We don't know if intentional or not. And all the light wallets on the phone, they were going to follow blindly the wrong chain, which will have been dead after the first day, without even knowing. So the first reason you want to have a node is that if you don't have a node, you don't know you are receiving real Bitcoin. You may be receiving fake transactions with wrong signatures, wrong smart contract execution, inflation. You can everything you have seen in the great presentation by Zender before. You can check the supply, you can check the signatures, everything he showed you. You cannot have it without a full node. Then again, this is a social risk, but not an individual risk very much. So the probability that you individually will be scammed like this is low. For example, during the New York agreement attack, everybody was speaking about that on Twitter. So you can just say, I will not run a node, and when I see on Twitter that people freaks out because there is an attack, I will ask Zender what is the right chain, and I will just trust him. So people can get away with that. So we have to talk about more individual reasons to run a node. The second reason is privacy. We discussed about this yesterday in the panel a little bit, but I would like to reinforce this point. If you ask a node to feed you all the transactions, then you are not private. You are basically associating all your coins, all your UTXOs together, asking information to this server. If you are lucky, you are doing this over Tor, like with Green or with Samurai or with Sparrow default. If you are not lucky, because for example you're using Electrum default, you are doing that over ClearNet. So you are associating all your TXOs plus your IP address. So again, privacy. There even here there is some way to navigate around this obstacle, for example, neutrino, client-side filtering. There are some ways to keep more privacy while trusting somebody else. But the best way is just run your own node. It seems complex, but it's way simpler than doing strange client-side filtering stuff. The third reason is that now we don't have Bitcoin base layer anymore as the only thing. Now you may want, especially as advanced user, you may want to do more advanced things. For example, running Lightning. If you want to run Lightning, you can in theory have it running on your phone with a light node asking some third-party server, but then you are trusting a lot. So when you advance, maybe you want to run your Lightning node, which require you full node. Then you also may want to run a coin join, decentralized alternative like join market, and you will need your own validated node. So the three reasons you want to have a node is: one, you have to check the validity of your transactions, and even if individually they will mostly be true, globally speaking, the probability of social attacks on Bitcoin are high, so you're better off, and the network itself is better off if you validate independently. Second, privacy. It's very hard to keep privacy when you're trusting a third-party node. And third, if you want to run anything more advanced, like fancy cold storage stuff or coin join or Lightning Network, you need a validating node. So there are good reasons. But the thing we will discuss in this panel is that to incentivize people even more, there are some idea to push, to put these reasons together with other kind of incentives in the context of the problem in general of people. I would call it the cloud computing problem. So back 30 years ago, people technical enough to have computers, they actually own a computer. Right now, even technical innovation managers in banks or even some startuppers in California, they don't actually own a computer. They are just trusting somebody else's computer with a technology known as cloud computing, which just means somebody else is running a computer for you and you just trust him. Even if you run your own instance on Amazon or anything else like that, you are just asking another person to run their computer with your program for you. So this is intrinsically easy to censor, easy to manipulate, easy to attack in many, many ways. So there is a tendency right now, even outside Bitcoin, there is a tendency to try to enable people to get back using their own computer with the same kind of perceived practicality of cloud computing or cloud storage or cloud stuff in general. So one example, Alex will give you more details. One example is Nextcloud. Do you want to replicate the same experience of Google Docs or Google Drive, but you want to do that with your own machine, which is keeping your data for you and not just trusting your documents to the Google corporation? You can do that with an open source alternative which is called Nextcloud. You want to chat with each other, but without Telegram server or Facebook servers keeping your messages, whether encrypted client-side or not, still it's very problematic to have one server keeping, it's a central point of failure. You want to avoid that, there is a matrix server with an element chat application. So there are many other applications you can use together with your Bitcoin node to incentivize you even further to run something. Of course, there are trade-offs. The first trade-off is simplicity. If you just want to run a Bitcoin validated node and that's all you want to run, you just install that on your laptop and you're fine. Don't use that for your key storage, of course, but if you want to use another wallet or something, but if you just want to have Bitcoin running, you know, on your Apple or your Windows device, you just install Bitcoin Core, one click, wait a few days for your synchronization, and then you're set. But if you want to really have a dedicated server, so if you want to move away from the cloud model and get back to a server model, which may be needed, for example, also for, imagine e-commerce. You have a website, you want to provide e-commerce, you want to receive Bitcoin transactions in Lightning or a main chain, and now you need a server to host your web services. Otherwise, you are just trusting some third party that can easily censor you and so on. Or even your blog can be censored and so on and so on. So if you want to move away from the cloud model, there are a few tools that you can use to incentivize you to actually take profit of the fact you have your own server working. The trade-offs are, one, as I told, simplicity. You want to just run Bitcoin Core, just install it on your laptop. When you close your laptop, it will go offline, but when you open it again, it will resync from the last time you were open, and it will just take a few hours and it will be in sync again. And so you can just use it on a per need base. If you want to install a home server, it will probably be more complex, but it will give you a lot of other tools. The second trade-off is security. Some Bitcoin purists, most of the developers I know, will say, don't do that. Buy one server just for Bitcoin stuff, so that's very clean, not a lot of dependency, not a lot of stuff going on the machine, few attack surfaces, and then you take another one for Nextcloud, and then you take another one for the metric server, and then you just have to do like system, DevOps to maintain the 3 servers running on the same IP. I mean, it's easy, right? So this is what they suggest. I think that's not a realistic thing to ask. I think that medium to low security in your Bitcoin node is better than not having a Bitcoin node, and especially it's not bad if you don't use your node for cold storage. Okay, so your wealth is not on a wallet on the node. Your wealth is in another wallet or a combination of other wallets. On your server, there is just Bitcoin. In that case, I think it's simpler, more incentivizing, and not that bad security to run Bitcoin node with other stuff. Of course, this creates several other trade-offs. For example, the thing that Lex will show you now is probably especially the embassy by Starlight Labs, and it will basically use Docker containers to take all these programs separated among themselves, which comes with some security trade-offs, but at least it will not require you to be a system engineer to keep that running. You will be able to just unplug, replug, and start and actually use the programs. So there are several trade-offs. So I will just tell you, and then I will leave the mic to Lex, the few alternatives you have in increasing degree of complexity and trustlessness. So the simpler thing you can use now, and which is also what we actually suggest at this point, with a lot of caveat emptors, is just something like Star9 Labs Embassy. It's single piece of, it's basically you pay and you get a disk image to put on a flash drive. You put it in a Raspberry Pi computer, and now you have all this self-hosted internet application that you want. These are Google Drive alternative, this Telegram alternative, your Bitcoin node, your Lightning node, your CoinJoin node, everything that you want, pre-installed, already prepared for you. But you have to pay and you have to trust a little bit. Again, you're not trusting them with your money in cold storage, because that is on wallets. So maybe okay to start. Of course, this has trade-off, like if something like the New York agreement attack happens, corrupting and compromising Star9 Labs company, then we're back to start. We have a problem of central trust. But right now, I mean, it's a good alternative. Then you can just take you can basically take well, not actually, even before. Let's go here, but we are not doing this today. You can actually pay to get your physical node delivered to your home already synchronized and working. There are a few companies offering these, companies or people. There is the Nodal people, very, very good guys. They are delivering an expensive but very, very nice computer to your home, which is already pre-packed with a lot of good stuff. And so Nodal is one thing. The other thing is Star9 Labs. They also ship you a completely turnkey solution to run your node with a lot of other stuff. Then there is Raspi Blitz. They also sell preloaded nodes. I think that even Umbrel does that, but I'm not sure. But anyway, okay, this is your option. Then you can just download an image, a flash image on your SD card, and start your Raspberry Pi. You can do that with Star9 Labs Embassy, or with my node, which is freemium, or with Umbrel, or with Raspberry Blitz. Then you can just take a Raspberry Pi and compile everything from source. You can do that even with Star9 Labs. You can compile their own operating system and every application. Of course, this will take a lot of time. I tried to do that in Mexico for a workshop with Don, and basically we arrived probably, I would say, 15% of the scheduled process of self-installation and compilation. This is the best thing you can do, but it will require a lot of time mostly, and it's very error prone. Especially, it's fine if you just want to go with Bitcoin Core, but if you want to go with Bitcoin Core plus Lightning LND plus Caravan or Spectre, it's more. If you want to also go with the Join Market, it's even more. If you want to go with Nextcloud, it's more. And if you want to install a metric server, it's over basically, unless you are already a DevOps expert. So the other option is you also buy. The other option is excessive. The thing we tried to do in Mexico is to install from scratch every application using signed binaries, checking the signature on the binaries. What you can do even more is you just download just a source code of everything and you compile every single program. This is the exaggeration. I think that most of people will never need to do this. So let's go back to this point, this imaginary point in my imaginary slide that you have to imagine. And this point is you get your operative system. You have to trust a single source. You don't trust the hardware because you buy the hardware yourself. You just flash the SD card and you run. Again, there is a trust source and there is a risk, but the risk is not on your cold storage. Even if you use your Electrum server to connect with your Sparrow or Spectre or Electrum to do cold storage, you are not trusting your keys to this server. So you can allow, but for example, a very complex backdoor could maybe try to feed you fake transactions with the organized attack. Mind the difference though. If you have a light wallet on your phone and you're trusting SPV, all the attackers need is just to coordinate the majority of miners or the majority of companies. If you run your own embassy node, what they need to do is to prepare a super secret backdoor in advance and trick you to install it or update it, and then they can attack you. So if you assume that they are not compromised at this point, then that system is safe for the future until you upgrade. And the way they can attack you is very, very difficult because they have to hide a backdoor inside a very complex system. The way the light client servers must attack you is just simply deciding to attack you. If you use a light phone wallet as your only source of trust for a Bitcoin transaction, then all they need is to organize the majority to attack you and feed you false transaction. You may not even notice. While in this kind of setup we propose, the kind of trade-offs are more subtle. So I would say let's go with Lex. He will explain you the stack, the software stack on an embassy. Again, you have alternatives, and but I think this is a good trade-off, especially if you're not super specialized. Maybe start with this, and when you feel confident, you will take another Raspberry Pi and you will do a Bitcoin only node and then a Nextcloud only node, and then you will compile from source the next time. But start with this, otherwise you will never start.
Thanks, Giacomo. So yeah, boy, am I excited to show off Embassy OS. It's a very exciting project. I've been working for the company only for a short time now. I've been really excited about it, and just through meeting them in Miami and discussing and understanding the ideology of the people that work at the company and blending in and realizing what a good fit it is. It's just one of those things that naturally happen. So I don't have much to add to what Giacomo said, but who here's heard the phrase, not your keys, not your coins? Do you know where that comes from? Do you understand how that became, well, Mt. Gox. But I mean, to any Canadians here, like, the biggest exchange in the world, Mt. Gox, collapsed, you know. And then the biggest exchange in Canada collapsed. The exchanges collapsed. And
the reason we've learnt this mantra, this not your keys, not your coins mantra, is because if you leave your money in the hands of other people, they become responsible for it. And it's not just that they sometimes don't meet the responsibility of it, it's that you're evading your own responsibility. And I like to see everything through this lens lately of, are you being a child or are you being an adult? And if you're going to be an adult, like with Bitcoin, like everything we're teaching at this conference at the moment, if you want to have the freedom that Bitcoin offers you, you need to be able to handle the responsibility of taking care of it. It's never ever going to be something that's just, that doesn't require some work and effort on your part. You have to meet the responsibility of it. And what I'm going to show is that the technical elements don't need to be insurmountable, but some responsibility is required. But to come back to my initial point, this not your keys, not your coins mantra is so powerful and so profound. It's become such a deep meme in the Bitcoin space, but it can expand outwards through the whole digital realm. Because when you're left in a situation where you're being a child and someone else has the responsibility of maintaining not just your money but other things like your data, you know, we don't say not your incidents of Mastodon, not your social network, not your photos from Taiwan or, you know, from 2016 in your Facebook thing. All of this data doesn't belong to you, just like your coins don't belong to you if they're sitting in Coinbase. They might legally belong to you, but they don't technically belong to you. So you're sitting in a situation where you've evaded your responsibility for not just your money, if it's Bitcoin sitting in an exchange, but all your data that sits in Google Cloud, all of your ability to communicate that is being left in the hands of big data platforms like Twitter and Facebook and all that. And it's just so hilarious to me that we're all left, I mean, we understand the nature of the client-server model to be the slave-master model. These people are put in a position of authority over us. And it's not just a case of me waiting for them to demonstrate abuse of that power and then saying to everyone, look at what they're doing, because they do it over and over again, and of course they do it because they're in a position of authority over us. And I just find it so funny that you have a position where an elected president still in office is effectively on his knees begging some big data platforms to please let me have a voice. And the reason he's in this situation is because he's not responsible for his own stuff. He's left it in the hands of other people, and they've denied him the ability to speak. So all he can do is complain and sue and do things like that. Or he can have something like an embassy, which sounds ridiculous, and I don't want to overinflate the claim. But if Trump was speaking and he had an embassy and he put what he wanted to say on his embassy, gave everyone a link to it where it became known, the Tor address for his own hosted website that's hosted on Tor, that information can't be removed unless he decides to unplug his embassy and take it offline. That's it, because he's in charge of it. And what I'm going to do now, I'm going to transition and show you guys what you can do with an embassy. Here is an embassy that I built myself. It's, oh, yeah.
Says embassy.
This is one I built myself. This is one Tone bought, or was given by Start9. All right. They come with a product key.
Trying to support.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad to hear it. This is the size of it. This is a personal server. So, oh, yeah, sorry. Here everyone can see that, all right? This is an embassy. It's a Raspberry Pi. It's the size of a very thick credit card. We are migrating to different hardware because there is a worldwide Raspberry Pi shortage at the moment. And I'm glad to say the latest version of the operating system can be easily run on other platforms. But there it is. It takes all of the complication out of it. Giacomo already covered this, so I don't want to be too redundant in what I'm saying. But prioritizing taking responsibility for your own stuff doesn't need, thanks to devices like this and operating systems written for this purpose, it allows us to have the counterpart to the personal computing revolution, which is personal computers they were tools of liberation and everyone could use them, but now, given that everything we do relies on remote access to servers run by a very small group of people, they basically become the gatekeepers of everything in the digital realm. So we need the counterpart to the personal computer revolution, which is the personal server revolution. If it's not your server, then you're again in a position of being a child. And I liken this to getting a driver's license and getting your own car as an adult. It means you no longer have to ask your parents, can I be driven to this place? And they get to say yes or no. They get to decide the location you might go, whether you go at all. Getting a driver's license and your own car equals independence. And that's what everyone needs to do in the digital space. So how many people have actually, everyone knows you don't want to be too reliant on Google, but how many people still rely on their platform in some capacity? Gmail accounts, YouTube. I mean, me and Tom use YouTube. But I've got rid of them in every other capacity. It's difficult, but what Embassy is doing is they're making it more realistic and more practical. So if you want to flip to, I'm going to demonstrate the OS now. And in fact, no, I'll just talk a little bit about what goes on when you buy an Embassy. Now, as Giacomo mentioned, you can compile it yourself. It is a source code available. I don't want to get into a pedantic argument about free open source software, on the different licenses, because people like to get bent out of shape about that stuff, and I'd rather not get into it. But the short story is, with things like Cold Card, which is something we've been celebrating this whole conference, and rightfully so, and Embassy, the source code is available. So no trust is required. And if you want, you can download it and compile it yourself and flash it onto an SD card, get the required extra parts, which is an SSD, ideally about 1 terabyte, because then you can run a full Bitcoin node that doesn't even need to be pruned. But you can have 2 terabytes, anything like that. Raspberry Pi itself can only handle, well, it can't handle so much when it comes to power draw. So if you want to run a couple of SSDs for redundancy or just extra large data, because remember you're going to be running your own cloud storage of this thing, you're going to need a USB hub, a powered USB hub, because Raspberry Pis can't handle powering a bunch of external drives, even if they're SSDs. So when you order one, what you'll get is either an image, and you can build the thing yourself, or you can just order an Embassy, and it will come, it will have an SSD, it will have a Raspberry Pi, like this in the case, which will have a product key on it. All you need to do, plug in the SSD, plug in the Ethernet cable, and plug in the power. And you'll start it up, you'll hear a couple of beeps, and then you go through the setup process. And the setup process requires writing the key into, you go onto your laptop, you open up embassy.local, and if you're on the same local area network, it will open up a page that looks similar to this. Guys, if you want to switch to the laptop view now, rather than the camera. I've already done the setup process on this, but it's so simple, and I really want to talk about that. All you do is you plug the Embassy in, you hear a couple of beeps, and then you go to embassy.local. As long as you're on the same network in your home, it will just ask you to type in the product key that is on the Embassy. If you compiled it yourself, during the compile process, it will have coughed out a product key for you to use, and you just need to make a note of it when compiling. And after that, it will ask you to set a password. Once you've set your password, that's it. This is the next screen you're at. And that is a process of roughly 30 seconds. That's how long it takes to get up and running. So right now, I'm just going to log into an Embassy. Now this is a fresh Embassy I'm logging into here. It's not this one, obviously, it's not plugged in. This Embassy is sitting in an Airbnb in Mexico right now. This is my personal server, or it can be used as one. This is obviously fresh, and so nothing is installed yet. So we have this startup screen.
Are you recording the screen?
Am I recording my screen?
Yeah, the screen, the laptop screen, internally with OBS.
No.
Okay, if you are.
Do you want me to be recording the screen? We can't record what's happening here?
Oh, yeah, but I don't see any camera on there. Where? Oh, you guys are, okay, good.
Okay.
Never mind.
All right, so nothing is installed yet. It comes bundled with a whole bunch of applications, and Giacomo already kind of mentioned everything. Obviously, the whole Bitcoin stack is there. We don't have Bisq yet. I really want to have Bisq on there. Shout out to Bisq. But let's go to the marketplace. Apologies for things being a little bit slow. Obviously, this is all over Tor, and Tor has been a little unreliable, but these are the applications that come bundled with it. They're increasing. Anyone is free to write one. anyone can contribute in that manner. But here are, you've got Bitcoin Core, you've got Spark Wallet, you've got both you've got C Lightning and LND, depending on which one you want to use. Synapse, which is an implementation of the Matrix protocol. That, to me, is the killer app of Embassy, though there are many. This negates the need for Signal or Telegram. And I'm so tired of being in a world where one platform that's hosted abuses its power, and then we all move to another hosted platform. It's so exhausting watching people get tired of YouTube and move to BitChute or to Rumble or something like that. Or, Facebook, people get annoyed and they all move over to Gab. What's the point? Because it's just moving from one, you're still staying within the hosted model. And the minute you go to self-hosted, that's how you fix the problem. So I think I'm going to do a demonstration, and two of the things I'd like to demonstrate are a combination of these two, because the advantage of Embassy is different applications are all linked. So LND works with Bitcoin Core. That's tricky to set up. If you want to run your own Bitcoin node and you want to run a Lightning node, they don't automatically work together, and that is part of the initial conception of Embassy in the first place, because it can be tricky fiddling around with a config to get stuff all working in an integrated way. In Embassy they do, and unlike all of the other platforms Giacomo mentioned that do a similar thing, like Umbrel and Raspberry Blitz and all that, there is no need to SSH into Embassy, because everything that you might want to change is all in the GUI. And a lot of effort has been made to do that. So if you want to tweak settings, like how much you prune your Bitcoin Core node, all that, you don't need to go into Embassy to do it. You don't need to SSH into it. It's all in the user interface, and it's all graphic. So the first thing I'm going to install is File Browser. And File Browser is not the most amazingly, inspiringly named, but still very powerful substitute for any hosted cloud storage you might be using. Now, that's installing right now. We can see it installing here. Oops. And I'm going to download a couple of bits and pieces, and I'll show you what it's like. You can, so it's already installed, and we'll see it in our services right here. So it's not running at the moment. You can just click on it and start the service. So now already we have our own cloud storage, and it's as simple as that. Here is the Tor address for it, and I'm going to go through to that. Close this for now. And we will have some instructions in here. You can read them if you need to. It will tell you that the default username and password are located in properties, so we can go through to properties. And this will allow me in a second to log in. So that's the password there. I'm not going to show it for now, and the default username is admin. So here is, we're going to go straight in. And this is like logging into Google Cloud, right? Or iCloud or any other cloud thing. But this is hosted by myself in Mexico at the moment. But any data I put here, I can be sure of the privacy of it. I mean, we just demonstrated last panel that if you upload a private key into Apple iCloud or something like that, all these allegedly private, hosting solutions, the money's gone, right? People are looking at this stuff. I mean, Apple were sort of proud of it. So this is it. It feels lonely here because nothing is in here yet. And so what I'm going to do is go to DuckDuckGo, of course, because we don't use Google, because we're serious Bitcoiners. And we're just going to get like a funny image or something like that. Funny picture. We can download it and stick it in our cloud storage.
A little scared what's about to show up.
Oh, it has a safe search on automatically.
Okay.
All right, so let's go with this. Because bears get a lot of hate in Bitcoin, and rightfully so. Understanding Bitcoin. Here we go. I'm going to save that right there. And now here we can go to the upload thing here, file, back to Understanding Bitcoin, and here we go. We're going to upload it.
That's what happens when you have kids at home. You default everything to safe search. If that was someone like me, this would be different.
Yeah.
How much is the default space in the drive?
There are two. When you buy an Embassy, you can either get a 1 terabyte SSD or a 2 terabyte. But I mean, or you can choose. I believe you can choose not to get an SSD at all and go with 4 terabytes or whatever. But if you want an SSD, the minute you go above 2 terabytes, it gets really expensive. But there's also redundancy options. There are 2 ways to run your Embassy. You can either have it mirrored, which means you have 2 1 terabyte drives, for example, and everything that goes onto drive number 1 is mirrored onto drive number 2. So if one of those drives fails, you won't even notice a single hiccup. Then you have another setup, which is just a logical extension. Like you can use them both in aggregate to give you a total of 2 terabytes. And then you need to take care of backups in a separate way. So here we go. Here is a file in my self-hosted cloud storage. If I want to share this, I just press the share icon. I can decide, I can set a duration, I can set a password. I'll say I'm gonna share this for 1 hour, the password is hello. You don't need to do either of those, you can leave them blank. When you press share, what it's gonna do is generate this is a link here, and I can copy the link, and here is what we see. That was what I just copied. Anyone can type that in, you can give that to anyone in the world, and they have access to your file. You can even make people admins, you can make folders and password protect those folders and give them selective access to your cloud storage if you want.
Is it possible to disable Tor? And also, is it HTTPS? Because if it's HTTP, can Tor actually now see the password and access your files?
No.
Repeat the question.
Sorry, you're saying...
Is HTTPS, is it HTTP or HTTPS, and can Tor see your password when you're putting that in?
No, it can't.
No, right? Because it's an onion address. I'm sorry, I was wrong.
Yeah, no, absolutely not. No, sorry, the question is there...
Secure transmission between the client and the server.
Yes, there's absolutely secure transmission between it. You're not leaking any... I don't know how to phrase the question exactly, but there's concern about security of what we're doing here. When I'm typing in passwords, can Tor exit nodes see the passwords I'm typing in? No, I'm communicating with my server. All the communication is encrypted during the transit in the Tor network, even as far as the exit node is concerned. So that is not leaked. The decryption is done by the Embassy, not the exit node, or any of the hops
Web
on the
server
way.
is not, the HTTPS is not required in that sense?
I'm not sure the details of what's going on there, but I don't know how to explain that exactly, but this whole thing is totally impossible if you would betray passwords like that. So I don't want to give the wrong answer there exactly, but yeah. So here is the link to a file that I've just uploaded to my cloud storage. But this is obviously great in and of itself. You can have files in here, you can modify them and use it kind of as a sort of, if you want, a very budget substitute for Google Documents. But far more interesting than this, just to add to it, is Pages. And what Pages does is, in an integrated fashion with your cloud storage, generate a Tor hidden service website for you. Now this is pretty stunning, and this is one of the things that amazes me about Embassy. What we're going to do is, first off we need to install it, but I'm going to go and download an HTML template, because both of these processes might take quite a long time, so it'd be good to do it at the same time. But what this means is a self-hosted website. So I'm a big fan of sometimes the kinds of products you buy that are controversial. They're not illegal, but Fake Mask USA is a great example. They sell things that look like masks. They allow you to breathe perfectly normally, but no one will ever complain about it. Their domain, every week they get shut down and have to go to a new domain. It's because they don't host their own website. So here's an example of something, I think I'm having a connectivity issue here. Is Tone around? I think he just went out of the room and completely killed this presentation because I'm on his hotspot. Someone get Tone, would you?
Connect to mine.
use the Wi-Fi?
It's rubbish. I need Tor, and the hotel Wi-Fi won't give me Tor.
You can use mine if you want, unless Colin.
Yo, is Adrian around?
I'll grab it. I'll go and grab it.
Alright, thanks.
So what's the advantage of having it on a Raspberry Pi or something like that versus a formal server? You know?
Well, Raspberry Pi, there's a question, what's the advantage of using a Raspberry Pi? Raspberry Pis are really cheap, and they use very little electricity. So the whole point is to make this, like in the fashion of running Bitcoin nodes in general, you don't want to make this stuff prohibitively expensive because you want people to do it, and if it's super expensive, then less people will do it. Though the new release of Embassy is now capable of running on anything really trivially. So
if you had servers available.
Yo, you just killed the whole presentation because you took your hotspot out of the room.
Sorry.
That's all right. Let me reconnect. I'm on Zenders at the moment.
Yeah, I'll go back to mine.
All right, cool.
Yeah, it's not to take it out of the room. There was a phone call coming in, so it kind of knocked it out.
Oh, fair enough.
That was the problem.
Look at Tone's network. Look at what he calls it, everyone.
Oh no, don't do that. Get the video. Everyone's gonna know. No, we're gonna edit that out.
All right.
So guys, in the meantime, while he recovers, if you want to check details about the service Embassy is using for sharing, it's actually on GitHub. It's called BAR, B-A-R, and you can check the details about the the details about the secure connection and Torification of the ephemeral link. And I'm reading it right now, but I can confirm so far that, wait, you can find it as Star9 Labs GitHub burn after reading folder, and you can read everything in the details of the sharing options.
Burn after reading is one specific app that I'm going to demonstrate, and it's an alternative to something like Pastebin, but it's James Bond style security. It's quite incredible. So hopefully we're working now.
Yeah, you're back.
I don't know. That might just be cached. I might not be connected still. I might need to restart the browser. Hopefully the install started before I did this, because then that will be taken care of on the Embassy itself.
Oh, sorry, yeah, you're right, Lex, I had the wrong one. It's Embassy Pages, the one you were using to share, not ephemeral links, yeah. Embassy Pages. Still on GitHub.
I've got to restart the whole browser, I think. One thing I'd like to mention is that I'm using my embassy in Mexico, obviously, so I'm connected to it via Tor, but you can connect over LAN as well, which is really fast. Uploads, if you want to upload a gigabyte file or something like that, doing it over Tor is really annoying. We do have local area network options for most of the services on it, which makes it really fast. So that's a recent addition, and it's been quite a game changer for how things work. Obviously, everyone is familiar with Tor, and uploading large files over Tor can take just such a long time. So here we go. It looks like we're back and rolling. File browser is installed. It didn't get my request to install Pages. We're going to download some just boilerplate HTML5. So we're installing Embassy Pages right now. And what that's going to allow us to do, as I mentioned before, is it's going to spin up a Tor hidden service website for us. And we're just going to upload into our file browser the data for all the HTML for the website. And I'll download something here. Does something look cool as a website? What about this Ethereum? That looks very interesting as an investment. No, story. All right, we'll download that. And we'll save it into my Understanding Bitcoin folder. Pages is now already installed. And we can go through to Pages. Needs, and this is a thing, it will say needs config. And often, typically, that's just going to ask you a few questions and say, what do you want to do with this service exactly? With Bitcoin Core, for example, it will say, how large, what do you want to prune to? Do you want to prune? And you can, or if you indeed want to prune. I'm just going to use the default settings here. So I'm saving the config, and what this has done is, if I start it, all I need to do is start the service. And it's already generated this. I'm just going to press the copy icon here, and what that is it is my own Tor hidden service website that's coming from my Raspberry Pi all the way in Mexico, and it was installed literally with click of a button. Here we go. This is the website, and we can even for demonstrative purposes, we can. I think it's in config. Apologies if it's not. We can make a subdomain, and we're going to add a subdomain here. We'll call the subdomain hello, and the settings shall, well, first off, I apologize, I'm going to have to upload that HTML. I'm going to upload the HTML that I just downloaded into my file browser. So I'm going to launch the interface there. Hopefully that opens the onion link. Not. I think I'm in properties for the password here as well. Here we go. So I'm logging into my file browser again, and I'm going to upload the data for this website. And due to the nice way everything's integrated, when I go into the settings for my embassy pages, I'm going to be able to just put the link to the directory inside embassy, inside file browser, and then it will automatically grab the data there. So here we're going to upload that, oh no, I'm going to need to unzip it first. Apologies, understanding Bitcoin. So this is the HTML that I just downloaded, this HTML up story. I'm going to remove the hyphen there because that creates a problem. So let's just call this HTML5. Here is Understanding Bitcoin, HTML5. That's what I'm going to upload. That's going to go into my cloud storage right there. This blue line at the top indicates the speed of the upload. As I mentioned before, if we were over LAN, local area network, this would have, uploaded very quickly because it's only, 0.14 of a megabyte. But while that uploads, we are going to, the value here must be HTML5 because that's the name of the folder in my embassy. And that's it, it's a web page, we're just going to leave that as a default. HTML5 is the name of it. The subdomain name is hello. We're coming out of all this, we're going to press save. It will automatically restart embassy pages. And as a result of all this, which is our website, we now have a subdomain. So if I go back to the beginning, hello.that, you saw I just created that. We're going to wait for embassy to restart. It's restarted. So if all has gone well, there we go. We now have a website, a self-hosted website that's coming from our own cloud storage where we store the data. And we have it right here. And to me, that is pretty miraculous. That allows anyone to host their own website as trivially as that. And I find that quite beautiful and amazing myself. And let's get into some of the other services. Does anyone here have Tor browser on their phone? Cool. Why don't you open it up and I will demonstrate burn after reading. I've got to think of a way to...
Like Tor doesn't work here, you need VPN, and VPNs are blocked as well, so.
VPNs are blocked.
Well, kind of.
I have mine, but I'm
Throttled,
recording.
let's say so.
Well, we're going to get into burn after reading anyway. I can demonstrate it even if people can't open it. Burn after reading is the most secure way to send someone a message digitally and be sure that only one person sees it. So needs config. We're going to go ahead and save default options. And start. So as we can see, we've got these, we now have 3 services running. As long as the embassy pages in the file browser are running as services, this website is available to people, the one we made here. Burn After Reading is another cool app, and that's what we're about to demonstrate. Obviously it has LAN available, but we're going over Tor because that's all we have available to us. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to write a little bit of a message, and that message is going to be available for someone to read, and it will disappear once they've read it. Now, obviously I don't mean to inflate the claims of it. They can take a screenshot or they can copy the message while they look at it. But the point is, once someone's looked at it, it doesn't exist unless they did something like that, made a copy of it. So, first off, I need to know the password to log in. Yes, it's very much, it's totally reminiscent of James Bond. You know, this message will self-destruct, because you can set a time limit as well. I mean, I'll set a time limit for 10 minutes, but here it is. Super secret message.
But that's Mission Impossible, not James Bond.
All right, fair enough. I apologize. So here is the link. And I'm just going to open it here because I can't think of a way to send it to anyone in this room. So this is Burn After Reading. I just made a message. Someone is going to be able to, whoever it is that opens this link, the first person to open it gets to read this message. And it says this could take a while, but it usually doesn't. All right, are we ready to view this message? All right, we are. So view, super secret message, done. Now if anyone ever comes to this link again, all they will see is a message that I quite enjoy, that says, there's nothing here, perhaps there never was. So that's Burn After Reading, but that's for a very specific use case. Let's get into some of the other apps. You have Sphinx, obviously. You have everything you're going to want for Bitcoin. So LND, Sphinx, BTC Pay Server. I'm not going to demonstrate any of the Bitcoin stuff now because this is sort of moving out of the realm of just Bitcoin, and I really want to highlight the fact that once you sort of go down the rabbit hole of using digital tools to fight for your own freedom and your own self-sovereignty, Bitcoin is just the first part of that. And I don't want to sound like Andreas when I say Bitcoin, money is just the first app because actually a big part of my skepticism of this whole space was the fact that since Bitcoin, we've been trying to decentralize everything else, social media, cloud storage, all that stuff, but we've been doing it with blockchains and scams for the last 7 or 8 years, and it's been infuriating. But energy has come back into this space now because you don't need blockchains and tokens to do all this stuff. You just need to self-host. So we have Mastodon, which is great, but I'm not going to set up a Mastodon account for this thing. We have Bitwarden, which is password management. We have Cups Messenger. That's not really so useful at the moment, so I'm not going to go into it. Synapse. As I mentioned earlier, this is pretty much the killer app. It's unfortunately a bit time-consuming to set up for this demonstration, but what that is it's self-hosted chat, and that's huge. It has all of the functionality of pretty much every chat app you use, so Signal, Telegram, but things like Slack as well. It has all of these things, and like Giacomo was alluding to earlier, it's just way beyond the capabilities of most people to maintain their own Matrix server. So Synapse is an implementation of the Matrix protocol. Matrix is, a chat. It sounds like you want to jump in here.
No, just to say this, that doesn't just have all the functionalities of Slack plus Telegram. It can also easily bridge with those services, so you can talk with people on Telegram from your Matrix account. Making it work is not trivial. Install it and maintain it is nightmare. So if you use Embassy instead, that's way better for time management purposes. But even when you have it running, you can go further and you can actually have a Telegram group where other people that doesn't have this can use their Telegram. Other people are coming from Slack, and you are managing all into a Matrix room. So it's very powerful, quite complex. So it will require a few years to get adjusted before, I would say a couple of years to really use all the power of that. But if you start playing out, really, it's something that you can use even with people that doesn't even need to know you're using this. So you can use, yeah.
Just a quick one, but if you're... My chat.
If you use Synapse to chat to people on Telegram or Signal, wouldn't then Telegram or Signal have your information?
Absolutely, yeah.
So Synapse is not the chat. Synapse is the implementation of the Matrix protocol server. So Synapse is a server-side thing that implements Matrix. The Matrix protocol can allow you to bridge, but of course, if you bridge, you can leverage network effect, but you lose privacy, of course. But it's not just about privacy. Think about reliability. Telegram can actually shut down your room. If you create a room in Matrix with some people from Telegram, Telegram can just shut down those users at the bridge, but your room is still on your server. So you can have an infrastructure which is solid and sound, and then if people really are too lazy to install another app which is called Elements, and they still are on Telegram because of habits, like most people, then they can still be joining, but they can be censored, and they can also be spied, while people using Elements cannot be spied or censored.
Yeah, that's right. So if you install Matrix Synapse, if you install Synapse on your embassy, what it will do is it will self-host, it will set up your own, just like we did with the website. It will set up a way for you to connect Elements, which is the application, to your own self-hosted instance of Matrix. Now it will be Tor hosted, and Tor is not yet native to the Elements app, so this does limit communication to people that aren't using a Tor Elements that's going through Tor. We expect this will be, there's a lot of energy in the GitHub around people integrating Tor natively. If you've ever used a Lightning wallet, that's one of those controllers that connects to an LND somewhere that's running on your node, you'll either have to open it using, if you're on Android, you'll have Orbot, which has VPN mode, which allows you to open an application and funnel it through Tor so you can access your node. But things like Zap have Tor natively inside the app, so you don't have to use Orbot, and it means on iOS it works great, because there's no way on an iPhone to run Tor in the background and have apps funnel through it. So currently you can't run Elements on an iPhone in a way that can connect to your embassy, but again, we do expect this to be fixed quite fast. So I find it quite amazing, and I'm going to demonstrate it here. This is the Tor party room that is hosted by Start9's own hardware. And this is sort of a celebration when you get an embassy and you decide to set up Matrix, which to me is pretty much my favorite app on it. This is all self-hosted. So this is my Elements. It's not connected to the embassy I'm demonstrating right now. It's connected to a different embassy, but here's my conversations with various people. I'm not going to open them up for obvious reasons, but these are self-hosted conversations. The data belongs to me. I'm responsible for it. No one can read it except me and the people I'm talking to, because that's it. There's no man in the middle. That's a different level of communication. It's not Signal, it's not Telegram, where there's a server somewhere. Yeah, it runs open source software, but is it running the open source software we think it is? There's still an element of trust, and to be honest, with things like Signal, they might be honeypots, right? It might be the worst idea to use Signal for security. I mean, all respect to Edward Snowden, but the best software is possibly the worst software in this case, because we don't really know what's going on with Signal servers. We don't know if they are running the software we think they are. We hope they are, but if they're not, this allegedly secure communication is potentially running a lot of risks. So if you want to communicate with someone securely, this is a game changer. They're hosting their own Matrix, they're hosting their own Synapse, I'm hosting my own. We are communicating between us, and you can have multiple accounts. So you can have Uncle Jim style setups, I believe that's the right expression, where just one guy in your house has an embassy. You're running a Bitcoin node, you're running Lightning node, you're running a Matrix server, and all of your family can connect to the one thing. So you can have communications between you, you all have Elements, it's being hosted by one guy in your family.
Are there any mobile apps that connect with this?
Any mobile apps that connect with it?
To connect with the embassy itself. You can...
Or the messaging site.
Yeah, well, usually you'd use it in the same capacity, which is you'd open up Tor browser on your phone, and then you just go into your embassy, just like I am with
Yeah, but that was
laptop.
web-based, right?
Yes,
what
exactly.
I'm saying is,
yeah, I understand. You want
native client.
there's no embassy application that you can download and install that interacts with it. No.
And also, as PDC Sessions mentioned earlier, he seems to have been dropped from WhatsApp, which is supposed to be secure messaging, but just like when we talk about Monero, like, who cares if it's secure messaging if you could be cut off from the service? Or who cares if it's secure messages if 10 people in the world are using it?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you need more entropy than that, and you can't have a gatekeeper.
Yeah, exactly.
Because WhatsApp bought, like Facebook bought WhatsApp, which is insane, which means everyone should immediately get off WhatsApp. And meanwhile, it seems to still be very, very popular.
Yeah, I mean, people, that's a good example because...
Which also doxes your phone number. That's another reason why I don't like WhatsApp, guys. Telegram has a huge advantage over WhatsApp, is that you can communicate with people based on a username.
Yeah, but you still...
And not a phone number.
I've tried signing up to Telegram without a phone number, and it's really, I don't know if it's actually possible.
No,
you can use a burner.
Right. You can use a burner. More importantly, when someone adds me to a Telegram chat group, the entire chat group does not actually see my phone number because I do use my real phone number for WhatsApp. And I've already been SIM swapped once. I don't really want it to happen again. So like they just don't think about that stuff. They're like private encrypted messaging, but there's so much more that goes into it than that.
Yeah,
An interesting thing about it, sorry if I jump in,
No
because this may be relevant in the next years. One of the reasons, even Signal, which is more privacy aware than Telegram, they still want your telephone number. One of the technical reasons for that is that users are considered not able to manage private keys securely. So the idea is that if you set up an account and then you just change your phone, you probably didn't back up any kind of original seed phrase or something. So the reasoning of Signal is, since users are stupid, you cannot manage private keys, then we need a single source of trust so we can reassign another private keys to the same contact based on your telephone number. That's why they do it mostly. Bitcoin may fix that, because if we over time grew more accustomed with private key management and seed management, I mean, this is already possible. Secure communication is possible since PGP. But the problem with PGP is that there was no incentive for normies to learn how to do PGP key stuff. With Bitcoin, we have incentives, money, and that may bring new apps that will use your, for example, a derivation of your seed phrase for your communication. Not your seed phrase, because waste your secret seed phrase for communication is dangerous, but maybe a derivation from that, so you can still rederive all your interaction from your money management secret. Maybe doable and even intelligent.
Yeah, so I've just downloaded and installed Bitcoin Core, and it's already, I press start and it's already going. A result that just will start of its own. And as I mentioned earlier, if you go into the service, Bitcoin Core, and press config, you can tweak all of the settings you need to tweak, which is how one of the many areas in which Embassy stands alone in this whole space of very cheap personal servers, because you can't do any of this on any of the other things. If you're running, if you're running an alternative, tweaking things like RPC settings, enabling 0MQ, which is necessary to run, that's how Lightning interacts with, or at least I think that's how Lightning gets the block data from Bitcoin Core. You can't do all of these things. You have to SSH in. There's no need to SSH into an Embassy. Of course you can. If you go to Embassy and press developer options, you can export SSH keys to the Embassy and then use that to access the Embassy if you want to. If you're doing it remotely over Tor, that's also doable. It's more annoying to do. It's much easier to do over LAN. But as my point is, the goal with this project is you don't want to exist in between two extremes, which is I rely entirely on big data platforms because I have no technical knowledge whatsoever, or I'm a systems administrator and I made a bespoke solution for myself. Everything is sort of in this personal server space is between those two extremes, which is stupid because you need it to be the people that are technically capable of doing all this themselves have and are. They're not using Embassy necessarily, even though they could, because it's very easy and very plug and play. But everyone, I'm sorry to say it, everyone using Umbrel and all of these other things are just sitting in Telegram groups all the time saying, this isn't working, and then if they get a response, which is not that often because they're so overwhelmed with tech support, they have to learn how to SSH in and tweak stuff and all that. And Start9 have said, look, if we're going to do this, we need to make it so simple that anyone can use it and that everything is tweakable in the interface, which is the one exception to this whole space of, you know, really cheap personal servers. This is what makes it amazing. So, or it's one of many things that makes it amazing. It's also a lot more stable, a lot more reliable. So here we have Bitcoin Core. It's doing its thing. For many that have come here and haven't run a node before, this is what running a node looks like. You can see we've already downloaded up to block 83,000. This is a Raspberry Pi, right? It's one of the cheapest computers you can buy, and it's already, you know, well on the way to getting, you know, through synchronizing with the whole Bitcoin network. And on top of that, once you run something like Bitcoin Core, you can run everything else that sits on top of it. At the moment, if we want to run Lightning D or LND or C Lightning or all of these things, BTC Pay Server, Sphinx Chat, we'll need to install Bitcoin Proxy because this is part of that Uncle Jim setup I was talking about before. When you run a Bitcoin Core node, you can interact with it yourself, but if you allow other people to interact with it, they can do things that can really screw you up. So Bitcoin Proxy is a way of allowing other services and other people to use your node with and giving them like a sandbox where they can't screw around with what Bitcoin D is doing, but they can do a certain amount of limited things. So that's already installed. Now that we've got that installed, we might need some config. Yeah, as it says, needs config, and we can press configure. Usually it's just default settings are good enough. We can just press save because we'll use the default settings there, and we're not running, so we will start that. I'm fairly confident this will work, even though Bitcoin D is not fully synced yet. That will take some days. And as I said, the Raspberry Pi is very budget computer, so we don't sync Bitcoin Core very quickly on a brand new MacBook Pro. If you want to sync Bitcoin Core, it might be like 5 hours or something like that. That's still pretty impressive for downloading the entire history of the world's most secure money. I think it's pretty amazing. So now we're installing LND, which is Lightning. That will sit on top, that will interact with Bitcoin via Bitcoin Proxy. And as mentioned repeatedly, everything is done in a way where all the services interact with each other in the way that they should. So very little needs to be done by the user. So at this point, if you want to run Lightning, this is the way to do it. Because we've talked about loads of different ways of running Lightning at this, all the different various wallets, all the different trade-offs with things like Phoenix and Moon. Here's the legit way to run Lightning. And the thing with Lightning is it needs to be online all the time. It's not much good if your Lightning node goes down. It's not like Bitcoin, where you can, if you want to receive some Bitcoin and you want to verify it for yourself, you get your fully synced node, you give someone a Bitcoin address, they send Bitcoin to it, and you can verify using your node that you got the Bitcoin, then you can turn it off. Because the Bitcoins aren't moving, they're sitting at your address, you verified that they got to your address, you don't need to do anything else, your node can go offline. Lightning doesn't work like that. If you want, Lightning is generally incompatible config. You see, this is like you run into problems like this. Bitcoin proxy config has been modified to satisfy Lightning. To accept the changes, press save. So, I mean, all of these things are an absolute headache to deal with if you're doing a bespoke solution yourself. But this makes it so easy. So Lightning wasn't capable of running because something was incompatible with Bitcoin proxy, and it dealt with it itself. You didn't need to go in there, you didn't need to tweak stuff yourself manually. And so now we have LND running. So this is really quite amazing because I wiped this embassy before this demonstration. This is straight out of the box. The only thing I did prior to the presentation was type in the product key. And that's a process of 30 seconds. It really is. So this is a brand new embassy. We've got Bitcoin, we have our own Bitcoin node syncing up from scratch. It's already around block 100,000 or something. We've got to get all the way up to 700,000, but it gets much slower for anyone who's synced Bitcoin before knows. We've got a Bitcoin proxy sitting on top of Bitcoin, and that allows us to use all these other services, as well as allow other people maybe to use our node if we want. And this is LND. LND has no interface. It's just it's a Lightning node running, just like Bitcoin D has no interface unless you're running Bitcoin QT. But this is it. We pretty much have the Bitcoin stack running on this embassy now, and it's going to sit there next to the router in your house, and it can run all the time. You'll never notice it. It just can sit in a little drawer by your router, plugged in via Ethernet, and it can run all the time, because that's the difference with a server to a personal computer. It needs to be on all the time. So if you're going to need something like this in order to be running Bitcoin and Lightning in the proper manner. It doesn't need to be this, but this is something that's perfectly designed for it. You can't be walking around, using a chat platform and you're self-hosting it, but it's self-hosted on your laptop, which is off at the moment. Like it's a server, right? So it needs to be up 24/7. So it needs to be rock solid, and it needs to be in a location that it can be left for a long time. So I've traveled all around the world. I've used Matrix while I'm doing it. I use that to talk to the other guys at Start9 and to other people I know that have embassies, and it's rock solid. It works. And the reason for that is because I have a dedicated piece of hardware that is a server, and it's not an Amazon web server. I'm not depending on anyone else. No one else can screw with it. So here we have, I've pretty much demonstrated everything, I think. For now, we have a lot more apps in the works, and as mentioned before, anyone can make an app. Anyone can package an app up for Embassy if you want to see it here. And let's talk about potential, because this has probably come up in the Q&A, but let's talk about potential for, how much do you need to trust Start9? We're very aware of all of the ways in which Start9 might have some control over you, and none of us want that. And the marketplace is an obvious example of that, because what if there's an application you really want on Embassy OS, but Start9 are like, no, we're not going to upload that. What if there's a shitcoin you want to be able to run a node for, or something like that? Anyone is free to package it up themselves. It's not necessarily the case that Start9 will take that packaged app and include it in our curated marketplace, but you can make other marketplaces if you want, and you can link other people to it. You can even charge for it if you want. So that's already possible. No one's done it yet because people like our marketplace, but you're not dependent on us for the applications. If there's a version of Bitcoin Core, an alternative version that you prefer, maybe you want to run Bitcoin Not or something like that, one of the alternative implementations of Bitcoin, you package it up yourself and you can put it in your own marketplace and you can run it. So again, you're not dependent on Start9 for anything. So I think, I think I didn't mention Bitwarden. That's the only thing maybe left to mention before we move to Q&A. Bitwarden, for anyone that's used it, is password management. And depending on, I cannot believe people depend on services like LastPass and things like that, centralized things for password management. There's a leak of that and it's just over. Like I really can't believe it. So Bitwarden's good. It integrates with everything, your browser and your phone, and you can use it to store all your passwords, all your backups for your two-factor authentication, the keys that are generated for when you're using apps like Authy and things like that. You have these backup keys for in case you ever lose a device. All that can be stored in Bitwarden. Super easy to self-host it, and very, very useful application. And again, to install is just as simple as that. And it's impressively quick, especially given that I'm syncing a full node as we speak, which is quite an intensive thing to do. So there we go. That's a rough overview of the embassy. I hope people like the look of it, and I'll open it up to Q&A.
Yeah, we got about 15 minutes before. Let me grab audio. Let me get this back. That's the second one today. Yeah, all right, guys. So we have about 15 minutes for questions, and then at 2 o'clock, lunch will be served, same place it was yesterday. So we got our first question right here.
You mentioned that the Raspberry Pi, does it work on like MacBook or whatever, you can install it?
Yeah, you can run it on any hardware pretty much. It's not necessarily trivial to do. The new, I'm running version 0.216, I believe. We are very, very near the finish line for a massive upgrade, 0.30. It's quite sad that I wasn't able to demonstrate it for this presentation because it's not quite out of testing yet. But with 0.30 comes quite a lot of changes that I'm not demonstrating here, but it's, at the moment, this is a modified version of Raspbian OS. What 0.30 is it starts with Ubuntu server, which is far more flexible on what it can run. It can run on, different architecture, x86, and it's. But I will say, this is a personal server, so while it can run on a MacBook Pro, it's unlikely you're going to want it to. You're going to want it to run on something that is.
Like Mac Mini.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it will be able to run on a Mac. I'm not sure how trivial it will be to get it to do that, but cross-platform stuff is now fairly well taken care of. It certainly can handle different CPU architecture, and you will be able to run it on many different devices.
Just the final one, upgrades on the OS itself, or updates on this, because one thing is the front end that we see, and you guys take care of it, but obviously if there's issues with the OS itself, and it requires, like if you're an administrator, you have to put patches or whatever to this OS system.
Mm-hmm.
Who takes care of this in that matter, right?
You're asking about
underlying operating system of that, right?
Yeah, I mean, you're not obliged to download a system update. You'll get a prompt if there is an update available. I mean, things happen all, like, the point is the services are going to get updated all the time. Like, LND is flying out updates all the time. Tor is getting updated all the time. There's usually good reasons for those things, so you're going to want to follow along, but you're not obliged to follow them, and you can check out what's going on the GitHub if you want to verify what's going on, and you can recompile the whole OS yourself with the latest version if you want. And I should also say, when Giacomo was compiling the software himself, and you noticed what an arduous process it is, it's a lot easier now. Part of the reason the upgrade's taken so long is they rewrote the whole OS in Rust. And before it was multiple programming languages, now it's mainly just one. So the compile process is a lot simpler now. So if you do want to compile Embassy OS, you're welcome to do it. It's obviously, if there's support issues come up, we don't prioritize people that downloaded it for free and installed it themselves, but we still try and help. Like, the goal here is to get people self-sovereign. It's not, it's an afterthought, thinking about the financial viability of things long term, but yeah.
Also about the new versions, some of you may be aware of the fact that there was some alert about Raspbian-based nodes started to have serious problem with Lightning after a lot of use of a channel, because it's a 32-bit architecture. So the advantage of this new version of operating system of Embassy over Raspberry Blitz or stuff is that it's finally Ubuntu, so it's 64 bits. So even with Lightning, I mean, your node will still work on 32 Raspbian, but there may be problems, especially when you abuse a channel and your HTLC number goes up. Right now, if you do that on a 64-bit platform, it's safer for the reliability of your channel.
Do you have any more questions?
Is there an email app?
The question is there an email app?
Server.
An email. That has not been something that has been a priority for the company. It's an obvious application. Maybe I can think about that, just sort of think out loud for a while. Speaking with Matt, I learned a little. Matt is the CEO of Start9. He somewhat considers email a dead protocol, because if you self-host your own email and you send an email to someone that has a Gmail account or a Hotmail account, they probably just won't get it. The email is kind of, it's like the layers which exist on top of email as a protocol have made a sort of walled garden that is impossible to access unless you achieve a certain scale. And yeah, so if you're like an alternative, but a big alternative like Proton Mail or something like that, you'll get through. But if you self-host your own email on, well, in any capacity, not just on an embassy, it's just too unreliable. Gmail will just block everything that comes to you. So we basically just said chat is the future, Synapse, self-hosted chat. It's functionally very similar when you think about it, and it doesn't have the problems that email does, so that's why email hasn't made it on here.
Yeah, I'll second that actually. I mean, I'm not technical enough to talk about the details, but I pretty much use Proton Mail, and a lot of automated messages that you guys got probably ended up in spam. Sometimes they don't go through. It's getting better. I mean, as Proton Mail becomes more and more mainstream, more and more email, because like Google knows at this point, if they don't allow people to interact with Proton Mail, they're actually going to lose people because Proton Mail is becoming more popular. Does that also mean that there'll be regulation forced on top of Proton Mail not to be somewhat secure? They've already been in hot water recently for, you know, giving authorities through a subpoena usage, like IP logs and usage cases, which I don't know why there was a big deal. You should have known that will happen. Like, the only advantage to Proton Mail is the contents of the email. I don't even trust that the subject of the email or other participants in who you're sending it to and who are you CCing is private at all. I never expected that level of privacy with Proton Mail, but if you're self-hosting, yeah, it becomes a problem. And if you're self-hosting and actually becoming popular as a self-host, you're gonna have like subpoenas in your house. Email in general has become like the thing I mentioned on the panel with privacy. Like, there's like, what do you mean privacy in your email? How is that like, it doesn't even compute with many, you know, gatekeepers and authorities and governments, like privacy in your email. That's like, why aren't you putting everything on Facebook for everyone to see? I don't understand. That's kind of the viewpoint on email now.
Yeah, and again, though, if no one is stopping you, if you write your own, if you package up any email client, you can have it. Start9 would likely include it in the marketplace, and even if they didn't, you can still make an alternative marketplace. There's a clone of ours with email added, and you're absolutely welcome to do it. It's just not been a priority for us.
Also, as a metric shield, you can link your metrics account with email and SMTP and stuff, TP. The problem is still that, so for backward compatibility, if you have people that will only write you emails, you can read that on your metric server. Of course, privacy will be the same privacy of the email provider of your counterpart. So if he's writing you from Gmail, Google will read everything and Google will be able to censor his account. But at least you can keep a copy of all the messages on your metric servers forever, which is still something. So the bridges can allow you to evolve and the counterparty to stay in the walled garden and bridge easily, not trivial.
My question is about backups, how to manage backups in Embassy.
Yeah, sure. So if I haven't really spent much time in here, here's the Embassy tab. Here you can monitor all the basic metrics of what's going on, like the temperature of your Pi, how much space is used on the SD card. At the moment, everything's running just off an SD card. There is no, I don't really want to focus too much on the specifics of it because so much has changed for the 030 upgrade. But at the moment, well, as I said, there's not much point. To go over backup specifically, you can go individually to each service. So let's go to LND, for example, a very important thing to back up very often, as we've established. You just go to the service, you press create backup, and it's going to complain that there are no partitions available. So you'll have to plug in, this would need to be done while you're near the device. Or you can leave something in the device for backups, which might be a good idea. You can just leave a USB stick inside the Raspberry Pi, or you can go and put one in as and when you need to. And right now I can't demonstrate because there's nothing plugged into it, but if I plug something in and we'll look for it, I can create the backup. This needs to be done at the moment on a service-by-service basis, but again, anyone here that wants an embassy is going to be getting a far superior example of what we're about, because this is the older operating system and the new one is it could have been ready today, but things take
It's
longer.
sold out on the website.
It's sold out. The issue is Raspberry Pis don't they're backed up. It's really hard to get Raspberry Pis. We don't want people to order from us and then we're like, yeah, we can't ship till February 2022 because there's no Raspberry Pis. Like, we all know the state of the world. There's a lot of supply chain issues right now. If you can still buy the image if you want, and then put it onto your own Raspberry Pi if you have one. We're migrating stuff so it's going to work trivially on Rock Pro next, which is very similar to Raspberry Pi.
Yeah, like who could have guessed that there was a Raspberry Pi shortage? And I actually remember buying a few years ago, I wanted all of the old Nintendo games and Super Nintendo games, and I bought like a Raspberry Pi with all of the old school games, Sega Genesis, like everything from like Atari all the way up until I stopped playing, which was PS2, and decided to become an adult a little bit early. And I have that Raspberry Pi, like it's up at my cabin, just to play like the old Super Nintendo games. And I'm like, man, I may have to repurpose that, for Start 9 because Raspberry Pi shortage.
Yep.
Last questions here?
Yeah, please.
Okay, so Luke Dash Jr. just got permanently banned on Twitter, so do you think you can have a Mastodon server on this?
Now, he's very pro-vaccine. What did he get banned for?
He's not that pro-vaccine.
He's very pro-masks and stuff, but not pro-vaccine.
Oh,
and he
okay,
said
my
that
bad.
if
Sorry,
somebody
Luke.
tries to force him, he will use his weapons to defend himself and his family, and he was permanently banned.
And his weapons is coding.
Oh, he has a shotgun. And so the point now is that even if he used the, sorry, like say if I just step in.
No problem.
If he used the Mastodon, he would be safe on Mastodon. One of the problems we have to solve or mitigate is searching, discovering, and indexing. What it means is that we know that Luke is also on Mastodon, but nobody following him on Twitter can easily find him again on Mastodon, or not automatically at least. You have to actively go. So the problem is breaching and discovery. On Twitter, there is a network effect. Everybody knows each other. If you move to another platform, either everybody moves, which is unrealistic, or you need bridging so that you can do stuff. There are some applications that do that, but it's still very...
we've debated bridging on my channel all the time. It's Jimmy Song and I debating bridging, where I always say that if you want Twitter, if you want to capture Twitter audience at base level, I believe you need to lock up every account with over 1,000 followers and every active account with over 1,000 followers and allow the current Twitter users to validate themselves to get that handle. Otherwise, you're never going to bridge these traditional systems.
The other point, maybe, for example, think about something like...
But they'll still be centralized.
Yeah, think about an idea like this. Sorry for derailing the conversation a bit. You have a program that will actually let you register some public keys and private keys, like Keybase a little bit. That went a little bit shitcoining, but Keybase is a good idea. You have this confirmation of series of public key, and then automatically, when Lukes get banned, then you have a new Twitter account which gets created from a bridge automatically, and it signals to all the previous followers, this is me, this is my signature. And followers that don't have this extension, they will just have to trust or not the new message. Followers with this extension will automatically refollow. So we can actually trick Twitter into making censorship useless, but of course well, there is a lot of discussion about that.
Yeah, so here we are, we're not trusting, we're verifying. Luke is definitely banned from Twitter. And that's a big shame. Jack is a big fan of Bitcoiners. As we know, Jack is a hardcore Bitcoiner. So, I don't know, these things are strange. But look, we're coming up with a solution. I'm installing Mastodon as we speak. This is this simple. If you want to get away from this sort of, client-server, parent-child relationships where you're putting social media platforms in a position of they are going to naturally adopt the role of a curator and parent because that's what there's no way that a platform like Facebook is not going to become a moderator of content. You're putting them in that position. They are somewhat obliged to say, okay, we can't have awful things like, okay, they're going to say you can't have Facebook Marketplace isn't going to let you sell drugs. But I mean, you know, there's all these other things that it becomes their responsibility to deal with because you put them in that situation. The only solution for it is self-hosting, and that's what you're going to do. Unfortunately, Mastodon is quite a large service, and it's going to take a while.
And we're already in between people and their food. So, so I think on this note, we're going to wrap up.